So I wrote transpersonal, I wrote movement, and I wrote hypnosis. What is transpersonal? Transpersonal is any way of being or any field where we're talking about transcending the self. What is the self in this case? Self in this case is the ego. And so what we're talking about when we're talking about transpersonal is transcending the ego, or an ego dissolution. What do we get when we get an ego dissolution or to transcend the ego? Well, we move towards healing, we move towards wholeness. I wrote here, who am I? Why am I here? What do I want? To really know the answers to those questions, we need to work with transpersonal psychology, transpersonal movement, as I wrote here, hypnosis or altered states. In this case, I'm using hypnosis as a synonym for an altered state where we can create radical change, radical transformation, move towards wholeness, move towards true creativity, which can't occur until we truly know who we are. I wrote, what is the end goal? And then why do we develop, desire, or work on anything? So why does one go to the gym? Is it simply to feel better? Is it simply to be healthier, these things? Well, many people might answer those questions simply to look better, but really what most of us are after, if we truly dig deep enough, is we want to know who we are. How are those things connected? Well, why does one want to feel better at all? Why does one want to look better at all? Why does one want to be healthier at all? It's because all of those things allude to making the most out of one's life. How does one make the most out of one's life? Well, first they need to know who they are. Self-realization is to know who one is. Self-actualization is to become what one is capable of becoming. Movement. Movement is all-encompassing. Movement is movement on all layers and all levels of body, mind, and spirit. And very often we start with development, we start working with the body. Eventually we want to start working with the mind. And eventually we want to move towards spirit, or true self, as I wrote down here. And what is the end goal? Basically what I'm saying is in a lot of fields, a lot of conversations, a lot of ways people are working, they don't just come out and say, what is the point here? There might be some surface level answer, but they don't really get to the bottom of things. And very often people waste decades. They go through these ups and downs, and they never truly state what it is they're going for. And what I'm saying is that with a true holistic view, body, mind, spirit, transpersonal movement, and hypnosis, I'm saying that we should state the end goal. What is the end goal? The end goal is freedom. The end goal is liberation. The end goal is to truly know who we are so that we can become whole. We can actually create in a true way. Two words, generative and reactive. Until you are capable of working with yourself on a transpersonal level, meaning to transcend the ego, you're going to be in a constant reactive state. What does that mean? The ego is reactive. The ego is the sum of all your attachments. The ego is based on a constant chaining to aversion and attraction, aversion and attraction, pain, pleasure, pain, pleasure. And in a constant reactive state, we can't know who we are. So we're constantly reactive. We can't be generative. To be generative is what it means to be creative. To be truly creative is part of the path to wholeness. Adventure is also a part of that. Adventure takes courage. Going on what I'm talking about here is an adventure. Going on the adventure of moving towards enlightenment, liberation, or true self, all of which are synonyms to some extent. Transpersonal movement hypnosis. Transpersonal meaning to transcend the self. Why do we move? Why do we move? Why do we want to be healthier? Well, very often people want to be healthier because they want to feel better, they want to live longer. But what does that really mean? It means in some sense they are afraid. Why do they want to be healthier? Because they're afraid of losing their health. So why do we move? We move so we're not slaves to our body, so we're not imprisoned inside our own body. So to some extent, we move actually to transcend the body. So why not just come out here and say that? So just as there is transpersonal psychology, there should be transpersonal movement. Movement being all-encompassing of movement on all levels, not just physical movement, movement of mind, movement of spirit, movement of thought, movement of emotion. And I mentioned hypnosis here because hypnosis is a very special field, a unique field, but hypnosis is also somewhat of a synonym, somewhat adjacent simply to being in an altered state. What happens when we move properly? For example, when one talks about being in a flow state, they're in an altered state. What can occur in an altered state? True creativity, true generativity, and radical transformation, radical change.